Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video, and welcome back to another mega Dickens read-along video. Today I'm going to be talking about Great Expectations by Charles Dickens and a few reasons why you should read it. So, if you don't know what the Mega Dickens read-along is, I will leave some links down below in the description with more information. But basically, the Mega Dickens read-along is a 2-year read-along where we have been reading the works of Charles Dickens in chronological publication order. And we are actually getting really near to the end. We only have 3 books left now, which I find slightly mad. I can't believe that we are nearly at the end of the Mega Dickens read-along. It has been so fun and such an enjoyable experience. And so the 13th book for the Mega Dickens read-along, the book for June 2024, is Great Expectations. So we are going to be reading Great Expectations throughout the month of June 2024. That is the whole schedule. Start when you like, finish when you like. Talk about it on the Discord server, which will be linked down below. So before I get into why you should read Great Expectations, let me tell you what Great Expectations is about. So Great Expectations was first published in 1861. It was serialised on a weekly basis, and it is a buildings romance, a coming-of-age story following the character of Pip. Pip comes from a working-class background. He grows up in a small village, small town in the countryside. He is going to be a blacksmith, but he has this kind of unusual element to his childhood because there is a local lady, a wealthy woman called Miss Havisham, who lives nearby, who sends for Pip, a boy from the village, to come and kind of entertain her, basically, and visit her. And she has an adopted daughter called Estella, who is kind of a similar age to Pip, maybe a couple of years older. And Pip kind of becomes fascinated by Estella and by the kind of like wealthy upper class life that Miss Havisham and Estella live. Although it's quite a kind of like crumbling upper class life. And then one day a lawyer turns up and says to Pip that he has great expectations, that someone is leaving him a lot of money and he has to learn to be a gentleman. So it is very much a coming of age story and very much about class, and it is really fantastic. I am really looking forward to my reread of Great Expectations. I think this will be my 4th or 5th read of Great Expectations. I last read it in 2017, so that was quite a while ago now, I guess, but I feel like there are definitely a few Dickens books in the Mega Dickens read-along where it had been a much longer time since I last read them. I think I have listened to Great Expectations on audiobook before. I feel like there was an audiobook of it I used to listen to when I was a teenager, but I think this time I'm going to listen to the audiobook narrated by Martin Jarvis. I don't think I've listened to that one before, and I am really excited to reread it. I feel like Great Expectations is a Dickens book that like goes up and down in my estimation. Like I can never quite decide where to place it, but I feel like it is a really fantastic Dickens book, and I feel like I'm expecting it to rank quite highly in my like Dickens ranking when I do an updated ranking at the end of the Mega Dickens read-along. So anyway, I'm excited. I feel like the one thing I have always struggled with a little bit in Great Expectations is the character of Pip, because I find him slightly annoying. However, I feel like I forgive him more for his flaws now than I do when I was younger, basically because I feel like a lot of his flaws come from him being quite young and not understanding himself and the world. And I feel like when I was a teenager or in my very early 20s, I was like, come on, Pip, pull yourself together. And now I feel like I'm older, I have more like sympathy and patience with him than I did when I was like the age of Pip. I don't know. I really love Great Expectations. I think it's fantastic and I'm very excited to reread it. So let me give you 10 reasons why you should read Great Expectations. My first reason is that it is a wonderful buildings romance. It is a fantastic coming of age story, and I think if you're someone who enjoys coming of age stories, who enjoys character growth and character development, and seeing how a character goes from childhood to adulthood, then I think you'll love Great Expectations. That element is very much at the heart of Great Expectations, and it does it so well. Another reason why it's worth reading Great Expectations is that it is one of Dickens's few novels that is entirely in the first person. So he only wrote 2 books that are entirely in the first person, David Copperfield and Great Expectations. Bleak House is also half in the first person, but the vast majority of Charles Dickens's novels were in the third person. Great Expectations is one of his books which is in the first person, and I really love the narrative voice. I really enjoy Pip's perspective. I feel like that works really well, and it's a slightly different element, I guess, in Great Expectations and a different element for Dickens, so that's another reason why I think it's worth giving Great Expectations a read. Then the third reason why I think you should read Great Expectations is that it is a very accessible Dickens book. When people ask where to start with Charles Dickens, I usually recommend Great Expectations as a really good place to start, partly because it is not that long. I mean, it's not like that short, but you know, in the grand scheme of Dickens, Great Expectations Expectations is looking pretty approachable, isn't it? I also think the first person narrative and the fact that we very, very clearly have a central character and his central plot really helps make Great Expectations a really accessible Dickens novel. Like, I feel like it's a good entryway to Dickens. It's a Dickens that a lot of people love. Like, I just think it's a really accessible, great Dickens and a really great place to start with Dickens, which I know is not that helpful if you're like 2 years into the Mega Dickens read-along, but, you know, I still think it's a wonderful book and there are many other reasons to read it too. A fourth thing that I love about Great Expectations is that it is a wonderful novel about social class and social mobility, about class tensions and class prejudice, and how the Victorian class system worked. For me, that's one of the elements of Great Expectations that I really love and that I think works so well. This is the story of a working class boy who wants to be a gentleman and is kind of shoved into the world of the upper classes and the upper middle classes and doesn't really know what he's doing, and the way he feels about his own class position as well as the way other people around him feel about his class position is so fascinating and so well done, and it's one of the real strengths of this book and a really, really interesting element of it that is definitely worth reading Great Expectations for. If you're someone who's interested in class in Victorian literature, then Great Expectations needs to be right at the top of your list. For my fifth reason, I have another thematic thing that I really enjoy in Great Expectations, and that is the themes around like crime and justice and morality. These are themes that are really important in Great Expectations. I feel like I can't really tell you more than that, but I feel like the way these themes are looked at is really, really interesting and one of the things I love about Great Expectations. The sixth reason why you should read Great Expectations is for the atmosphere. Great Expectations is a hugely atmospheric novel. I feel like it's one of Dickens's most atmospheric novels. I mean, I feel like I'll Meet Your Friend is the most atmospheric, but we'll talk about that very soon because, you know, that's the next book in the Mega Dickens read-along. Anyway, Great Expectations is very, very atmospheric, and Dickens plays with kind of a lot of different influences. The Gothic is definitely like present in Great Expectations, and I feel like in some ways it's Dickens's most Gothic novel, although not everything is Gothic in it, but there are definitely like Gothic moments and Gothic characters and Gothic set pieces. Miss Havisham is quite a Gothic figure in many ways. There's also a lot of juxtaposition between sort of life in London and life in the countryside, and I just feel like Dickens does a lot of interesting things with different atmospheres to create this wonderful, rich, fantastic book in Great Expectations. The seventh reason why you should read Great Expectations is that the plot is just really, really good. Like the twists and turns of it and all the clever things Dickens does and the way he ties everything together, it's just really, really well done. I think the plot of Great Expectations is great. And, you know, as I said, it is a slightly shorter Dickens, it is a tighter Dickens, and the way he kind of pulls the plot together and kind of focuses on particular things, I just think it's done really well. Another element of Great Expectations that I really, really enjoy, and one that I think is worth reading it for, is that it is a novel that is a sort of unusual, not quite a love story, because there is sort of a relationship at the heart of this book, or a sort of possible relationship, I suppose, at the heart of this book. And it is much more central to Great Expectations than romantic relationships usually are to any Dickens novel, I would say. I think it is probably the novel that is the most, like, led by that. But it is definitely not a straightforward, ordinary love story, if it even is a love story at all. But I feel like the way Dickens kind of plays with elements of Victorian love stories and does something slightly different, I really like. And I think that's done really well. So that's another thing that I really love in Great Expectations. The ninth reason why you should read Great Expectations is because the characterization is amazing. There are so many fantastic characters in Great Expectations. And I feel like especially if you've been taking part in the Mega Dickens read-along and you've just read A Tale of Two Cities, as I have, and you were, as I was, perhaps a tiny bit disappointed by the slightly less exciting characterization of A Tale of Two Cities. Sorry, I will talk about that in more detail when I do my video about A Tale of Two Cities, but I find the characterization in A Tale of Two Cities a little bit lacking, but it's definitely not lacking in Great Expectations. There are so many fantastic characters. Mr. Jaggers, Miss Havisham, Estella, Wemmick, Herbert Pocket, Joe, Pip himself. As I said, I used to find Pip quite a frustrating character when I was younger, but I feel like I find him less frustrating now, and I do think even if you find him really annoying, he is supposed to be annoying, kind of, like he is going on a journey and he has a lot of stuff to learn. And I feel like Pip is a very complicated, psychologically interesting character. And I feel like one of the things I love about the characterization in Great Expectations is that Dickens strikes a really good balance between like psychologically complex, interesting portraits of, you know, really human people and like his glorious eccentrics. You see many, many eccentric characters in Dickens, and there are some truly fantastic eccentric characters in Great Expectations, thinking especially of Miss Havisham, Mr. Jaggers, Wemmick, and so many more. Like, there's just so many fantastic characters in Great Expectations, and I love that. The 10th reason, the final reason why I think you should read Great Expectations is because it has a really interesting place in popular culture. Like, I feel like the Dickens books that have most sunk into popular culture are A Christmas Carol, Oliver Twist, and Great Expectations. Maybe A Tale of Two Cities, I'm not really sure. I feel like A Tale of Two Cities is like Dickens's most read book or most sold book, but I don't actually think it's made its way into popular culture in the same way as the other three. Great Expectations has very much made its way into popular culture. You know, in the UK at least, like, nearly everyone would know who Miss Havisham is and have a sense of Miss Havisham's aesthetic, shall we say, even if they didn't know anything else about Great Expectations. And so it's kind of fun to, one, see like what all the fuss is about, but also to kind of compare Great Expectations as it is as a novel to like the image of Great Expectations in popular culture. One thing I find really interesting is that I've never seen like a screen adaptation of Great Expectations that I have thought worked or captured the book for me, and I've seen quite a few. They tend to, as they often do for Dickens when making a screen adaptation, strip out all the humour which makes Dickens glorious, and just leave it like gritty and grimy and really, really dark, which is an element of Dickens, but it's not the whole thing, and if you don't get the balance, it's not Dickens. I feel like the 2020 David Copperfield adaptation will forever be like my true favourite adaptation of a Dickens novel, because even though it wreaked havoc with the plot, it's the only Dickens adaptation I've ever seen that captured the sheer joy and fun of a Dickens book. Anyway, that's a side note. Anyway, I've seen several TV adaptations of Great Expectations and just never really got on with them. I did want to see a stage adaptation of Great Expectations, which I loved, but I did see that when I was like 10, 12, before I had read Great Expectations. It made a really big impact on me, like I still remember it quite well, but whether I would like judge it in the same way having read Great Expectations, I don't know. I just thought it was incredible, and that was my first like introduction to Dickens, being like, oh, this is an exciting story that maybe I want to experience from the pages. Anyway, I just think it's quite fun to read Great Expectations and think about it because it is quite a well-known book, and you know, I do think it's fantastic. Okay, so those are 10 reasons why you should read Great Expectations. I feel like another reason should just be that it is really, really, really good. And I'm really, really excited to reread it because it's been a while. That's all for now. Do let me know down in the comments, are you going to be joining in with the Mega Dickens Read-Along this month? Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.